All right, Journey Church family, it's time to quiet your hearts and your minds for the Word of God. Pastor Peter Jones is coming to deliver a word that is going to empower you, uplift you, and encourage you in your spirit today and help you to draw closer to God so that you can know who you are in Him and who He is to you.
We're starting a new series today. Take a look at this.
Hello, it's me, your money. Let's talk, shall we? Ooh, look, your package came today. I can't wait to find out what we ordered. I'm sure you can't either. Look what I found. Remember this? A penny saved is a penny earned. Hello? Anybody in there? Echoey. Just look at them all. We're rich. I don't like the word hoarder. I prefer the term saving visionary. Who needs a 401k when this buried treasure could be worth something one day? And this. Yes, this. Worth every penny.
All right, we're talking about your money. Your money. And the thing is, if money could talk, what would it say? That's the real question, right? If your money could tell you something, what would it say? What would it say? And I know you're saying, I'm not going to say a word because I don't want you to know what it's going to say about me, right? But your money is constantly talking. And one of the things I realized this week, the day, it was November 1st. It wasn't even hours after Halloween. And I had reindeer showing up in my neighborhood. I saw stores already starting putting out their Christmas stuff and everything was piling up. And one of the things that it reminded me of is this is a season where you're about to spend a lot of money. Basically, that's what the culture is telling us. That's what our culture is telling us, that we're about to enter into a season where we're about to become consumers in every aspect of our lives. In fact, some of you are already populating your Amazon Prime list right now. You know, you just added it to, see, I know I'm not alone. You're already populating it. It's already, some of you may have even started receiving packages, but I'm not going to go there. But the fact of the matter is that we're about to go into a season of spending, and our money is already talking. In fact, for some of us, our money has been shouting for the last year. And if you really took a listen to your money may say, you may be saying about your money this, say, you know, I know what my money is going to say to me. Some of you are already familiar with that. You say, well, yeah, I know I should have known what it was going to say because I've seen this show up in my life over and over and over again. And for some of us, you're saying, well, no, I shouldn't have with my money. So you're saying, yeah, my money, I know you want to say this, but I know I shouldn't have. I know I wanted to do good, but as Paul says, you know, I just could not. Something just came over me and I just can't. I had to hit enter, add it to the cart, see if it just fits. I can always return it. But the reality is that we're just swiping. Not only are we swiping our cards, we're pulling out the cash. We're pulling out our phones, sending money through cash apps. You got subscriptions that you have forgotten about that is still taking money out of your account every month. And you're saying, well, preacher, stay away from my money. That's what we're going to say. Don't talk to me about money. But the fact of the matter is, if you've been coming to church, you know that Jesus said more about money than he did about heaven. If you haven't been coming to church, this is new news for you. That out of all, Jesus had about 36 parables that he said and that he told, about 36 parables. 16 of them were about money and your possessions, about your stuff. So if Jesus found this to be important, I'm saying this is over heaven. See, you've been hearing about heaven for a while, but no one talks about your money. And Jesus thought it was important, so then I have to think it's important for me. And so what do we have to say? I can tell you what's going to be real, is that you would be surprised on, if you know what your money would say, on how much it aligns up with what Jesus has said about your money. We just got tired of listening to it. But Jesus would say something like this, and this is also something that your money would say. It would say that I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. This is what your money would say. I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. You see, there's not much play about money at funerals. There's not much talk about money when you're at funerals. But yet, we spend our lives chasing it, spending it, getting more of it, hoarding it, doing whatever we can to make sure we're secure with it. But at the end, your money would say, yeah, I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. And so how should I use money? Money reminds us that the means are better than the end. Let's take a look at this. It says, make money an end and you may end up alone. That's the reality. If you make money an end, I'm going to say that again. If you make money an end, you may end up alone. So we have to use money as a means to an end to make life meaningful. In fact, the means I have to make it meaningful. So that means whatever I choose to use the money for, it has to be meaningful. That means it has to have a purpose beyond me. It means it has to exist, or it has to continue to have its purpose fulfilled beyond its initial use. That's why people say you have to make your money work for you. That means it is doing something beyond what you initially thought it would do. It's continuing to produce returns beyond what you initially expected or invested it in. It begins to make money for you. So it is a way to be meaningful, a tool to be meaningful rather than being a means to an end. So we're talking about money. We're talking about money, and I know it gets quiet when we start talking about money. But being a means to an end is what makes anything meaningful. That's including you. So that means I have to be seen as not only, for me to have a life that is meaningful, purposeful, that is significant, that people will be talking about for generations to generations, that means I have to see myself beyond just making it every day, getting up, going to work, taking care of my kids, taking care of my family, raising great kids, having a good house. That's not meaningful. That's not meaningful. But the end result is if I begin to invest my life and begin to see my life long term beyond what I exist today, beyond what 80 years or 90 years or 100 years, I ain't going there, but what 100 years may take me, if I begin to see myself in light of having a more meaningful life than when I'm here, that means I'm starting to look at my legacy. I'm starting to look at things beyond me. That's what makes it meaningful. Do you know we still talk about Mother Teresa? Because what she did was she focused on making her life meaningful. The reason why we could talk about her today is because people were talking about it. You may have never met her. You never even know where she lived. Some people didn't even know she was in India. You don't know where she lived. You don't know where she came from, but you heard of her because she made her life meaningful. She says, beyond what I can do, I'm going to ensure that there's more beyond than what I am actually doing right now. And her legacy continues today. So how do I make my life meaningful? To become a means to an end, which is beyond you. So when you decide to be a means to an end, your money becomes a means rather than an end as well. When you decide that my life is going to become meaningful, that means I begin to invest my money, and my money begins to follow the direction that I have for my life. Because money is a tool. It's a tool or means to the end. But it is not the means for your life. So let's look at this. When I began to think about this, there's this story, and if you've been here at the journey, you've heard me tell this story. This is one of the most favorite passages that I have because it just brings this point out so well. It's in Luke. Luke was a physician. He was a doctor in his day. And Luke was not a disciple of Christ. He came on a lot long after. And what he did is he investigated all the teachings of Christ, all the things that took place about Christ. He investigated it thoroughly. And then he wrote about it. And he documented it. And then as people started collecting his letter in his research, they decided to put it in the Bible because he'd done such a great job of just documenting what he saw in his research and what he discussed and discovered through all of his travels about this Jesus. And so they consolidated his work into the Bible. And in Luke, the 16th chapter, we start to hear about one of his records of one of the stories that Jesus was telling to his disciples and to a crowd that had gathered around. And so here it is in Luke, the 16th chapter and the first verse. It reads this. It says, Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So yeah, there was a rich man. He was so rich, he couldn't keep track of his own money. He had to hire somebody to keep track of his money for him. And so he was so rich that people would say, this guy, he didn't even care where his money, he cared, but he didn't have to pay attention to all the details about where his money was actually being spent or how it was being used. That's how rich he is. Now, I'm not there yet. But this guy was pretty rich. Right? And then he hires this manager, and what he hears is the manager was accused of just doing terrible things or wasting, being frivolous with his money. The manager was being accused of acting like the money was his. Right? Let's go on. 16:2, it says this. So he called him in, and he asked him, what is this I hear about you? I want you to give me an account of your management because you cannot be my manager any longer. He says, what I've been hearing about the way you're treating my money, if money could talk, what my money is saying or what people are saying about my money is that you are wasting it. And the manager is confronted. And he says, the owner says to the manager, guess what? You're fired. You're fired. You can no longer be my manager. But he says, this is what I need from you. Before you go, the manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master, this is the manager talking. The manager says, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. So basically he says, my boss has fired me. I got a little bit of time. What am I going to do now? Now is a time of urgency, a sense of urgency. Now is a perspective of time. He says, with the little bit of time that I have, because the manager tells him to sharpen up his books for him, to make his books right so that he can hand over the books to somebody else who's going to replace him. All right? And he says, so I got this little window of time. Before they walk me out, grab my boxes, and tell me to pack up my desk, I got this much time left. What should I do with it? I want you to look at that perspective, because I don't think we look at ourselves through that perspective. I got this much time here. What am I going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? And this is what the manager is saying. The manager says, I got this much time. What should I do? He says, I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm allergic to the sun. I can't go outside and dig up and work out there and dig up roads and put pavement down on the road. I'm sorry, but it's just not in me to do that. He says, I can't do this physical labor stuff. That's just not in me. I'm used to getting pedicures and manicures and I'm used to, this lifestyle that I've grown accustomed to. This will not suit me. That's what he says. He says, and I'm ashamed, which means I'm proud of where I came from. I'm proud that I got to here. I got a reputation to keep. This is what his perspective. Now, he just got fired. He just got fired, and he's like, I can't do this, and I can't do that. By the way, I know a lot of people without work who says the exact same thing. So don't act like this ain't you. He says, I can't do that. But he says, I got a little bit of time. What am I going to do with the time that I have? And so he thinks for a little bit. He goes, I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their home. So here's the intent. He's already starting to think. He says, my goal, he sets a goal. My goal, I want you to hear this because this is a key to financial management. Set a goal. He says, I want, with the little bit of time that I have, the goal to be that I'm welcomed in homes when I leave this job, that people will take care of me just because of who I am. That's basically what he's saying. Now, Jesus is telling this story. You gotta realize that the Pharisees are around. His disciples are listening to this, and they're like, Jesus, tell us how to deal with money. And Jesus said, listen to this. This is the story I want you to get a hold of. And he's telling this story, and they're leaning in. And they're like, okay, this is good. I know exactly what's going to happen. That's what they're thinking right now. But this man, this money manager, is smart enough to say, I'm going to create a plan to sustain my life after I transition from this place of work to my next place. I want you to hear that again. I got to set a plan so that when I transition from this stage in my life to the next stage of my life, I need to have a plan. Can I say it again? I need to have a plan for when I transition from where I am now to where I need to be in the future. That's what he's thinking. That's what he's saying. So, this is what he does. So he called in each one of his master's debtors, and he asked the first one, how much do you owe my master? How much do you owe the boss? And he says, The first guy goes, I hold about 900 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, quickly, I want you to sit down. I want you to hear that again. Quickly. There's not much time here. We don't have that much time. So I want you to quickly sit down and cut your bill in half. 450. That's all you're going to do. Pay me right now the 450 and we'll call it even. You don't owe my boss anything. Sit down quickly. This is the time I need you to do something urgently right now. He's putting his plan into play, but he's ripping his boss off. Ripping his boss off. But he says, I got a little bit of time. A little bit of opportunity here. Let me take advantage of it now. Now, I want you to know, if I was the debtor sitting there and somebody said, cut your bill in half, I'm going to get about doing it, right? I'm going to get quick. And what is my response to the manager? Thank you so much. You've been so generous. Oh, and guess, if you need anything, you call me. I'll answer, and I'll take care of you. I'll hook you up. That's what he says. Then the manager calls the second guy in. And he says, how much do you owe? He goes, I owe 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. And he told him, take your bill, make it 800, cut it. And he says, and by the way, if ever I call you, just remember what I did for you. In my kindness that I've shown you. He said, I want you to remember me. Then, does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? If you don't remember, but the man on the cross said, remember me, Jesus, when you come into your kingdom. And so here it is. This man is going, just remember me. Just remember me. I may knock someday. It may be sooner than later. I'll be pulling in that chip, asking for a favor. And the guy's like, yeah, whatever you need. Whatever you need, I'll remember. But he's thinking about preparing himself for the transition to the next place. Let's go on. By this time, you can see the crowd. If you're a rich person in the crowd, you're getting upset. You're like, hey, this man is ripping him off, his owner off. This money manager is terrible. He should be jailed. He should be imprisoned. And if you're on the other side, you're like, man, that guy, he's smart. Wow. And yet, Jesus is setting up this perfect story. And the scripture says that the master, by the way, every time Jesus tells a parable, there's always somebody that represents God or the kingdom of heaven or Jesus, right? And there's somebody that represents you and you and I. And so Jesus now brings it in the clarity, and he says, this is what the master is going to do. Do you know what the master's going to do? And everybody's sitting there going, absolutely. We know exactly what the master's going to do. Isn't that right? Do you know what the master's going to do? The master, you're going to say, he's going to be angry. He's going to do this. And Jesus says the exact opposite. He says, the master commended the dishonest manager. What? What? The master, that means the master laughed when he heard about it. The master sat there and says, way to go, great job, to the money manager. And the people in the audience had to be just as confused as you are now. Why would he do that? Why would Jesus commend, if he's representing God, why would Jesus commend this crook? Listen to what he says. He says, the master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. He didn't commend him for stealing from his boss, but he commended him because he was strategic. Because he thought in advance. He started thinking beyond his current situation. The way he looked at money was not something that was just something to fulfill himself immediately, but he began to plan a couple steps ahead. He says, this man is strategic. He is shrewd. And so Jesus says, the master commended him because of his strategic thinking. His mindset was beyond his current situation. Now, you must be thinking, what does that got to do with me? What does that got to do with me? The manager realized he had a limited amount of time, a limited opportunity, and that he needed to maximize the return on that time. He thought that strategic. And my question is, are we thinking as strategically? That I have a little bit of time, a little bit of opportunity window that God has placed me here in the confounds of this time and this generation in which I was born. I have a little bit of time, a little bit of opportunity. What am I going to do? What is the meaning of my life going to be? And the tools and the resources that God gives me need to follow after that goal. That's what Jesus is talking about here. And so he commends this man, and then he goes on. He steps out of the story and he says this. He says, for the people of this world, he says, do you know non-Christians? Do you know people that are not are not considered or have any thought towards God? People who think that life is limited to the breath they took when they were born to the day they die. If people who think only about this little piece and this little span of time and what they have right now, they do what he says. They are more shrewd. They think more strategically. They think more about their future. Then that means what? Then who? In dealing with their own kind, then the people of the light. He said, who are the people of the light? Christians. Who are the people of the light? The Jews at the time. He says, so the people of this world think more strategically than the people of God. This is Jesus' observation. This is what Jesus is saying. And he's saying, we got to do better. We got to do better than that. How can we allow people who don't even know God, who are given the promise of God, who are given the blessings of God, how could we be less futuristic or strategic about our decisions in life concerning money than the people of this world? That's what he's saying. He's saying, you need to take this as a priority. This is a priority for us to get right, in other words. And he goes on. And I would say it this way. The money manager was commended for taking advantages of his limited time and his limited opportunity. Are you taking advantage of your limited time and your limited opportunity? Let me go on. He says, I tell you, and this is what Jesus is saying. He says, use worldly wealth. I'm sorry. There must be some other kind of wealth that exists if I have to use worldly wealth this way. I mean, that's what he's saying, right? He's saying use worldly wealth. That means there's another type of wealth that we may not be tapping into either. So if we think that there's only one type of wealth, maybe that is the problem. So he says use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself so that when is another time word, here's another time, when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. When means it's going to be temporary for you. That means at some point it's going to go. In fact, some point you're going to be gone. And your money is still going to be here. Your stuff will still be here. He says, so that you are welcomed in eternal dwellings. Now you got to realize, at this time when Jesus was talking about eternal dwellings, this would have not made sense at all. See, we get the benefit because Luke is writing this on the other side of Jesus' resurrection. But at Jesus' time, when Jesus is telling this story, this would have made no sense because people wouldn't have grasped the fact that life is eternal. That life is beyond what it is right now. But Jesus is saying, wait a minute here. There is something about using as a tool, using as a means your money so that you can do something that exists beyond you. There's an investment that you can make that will happen and matriculate beyond you. So according to Jesus, he's basically saying money is a tool. Money is a means. Money is a resource that I have right now to make a difference in something that is absolutely eternal. That's what he's saying. If I accepted that philosophy, if I accepted that statement, that means I don't need to consider only 10% of my money. I mean, I need to look at 100% of my money in light of something eternal, not just 10, not just a little piece, not just what I set aside for $20 a week. He says, no, you need to look at all of your money through the lens of something greater and beyond your existence. So I have to ask myself the question then, how can I leverage more of what I have as a means to an end that is not me? And most of us, if truth be told, we're looking at our money for the sole benefit of me, my family, and make sure that I'm set up and my family coming behind me is set up. That's it. That's all about you. But Jesus says you need to be looking at money beyond, from a perspective that is greater than that. That's what's going to give it meaning and make it meaningful. In fact, he says it this way in Acts, Paul says it this way in Acts 20:35. It says, happy is the person whose life is ordered around giving than receiving. He says, if you order your life around position, that means my goals, everything that I do has to be surrounded and ordered. I strategically planned it around how I'm going to use my money than just taking care of me. Have I decided in advance to do something different? Have I decided in advance to make a difference beyond me? I know one of the things that I taught my kids when they were this age and young, all the way, it's a practice that Maria and I have put into place since we got married, is that we said, what percentage of income are we going to live on? What percentage of my income am I going to live on? You see, most of us don't think in that terms. We think of what percentage of dollars can I afford to give away, and then what can I keep for myself? But as long as you're looking at dollars, when it changes, the more you make, guess what happens? You grow into just spending the dollars. But when you think about it from a percentage standpoint, it doesn't matter how much you gain or how much you make, the percentage stays the same. So one of the things that we decided is that we're going to give 10% of our income to the church, and we're going to give to the work of God. That's what we're going to give 10%. We're going to give anything that is above and beyond that generously to those that we encounter. And we said that we're going to get 20% of our income into savings, and we're going to live off of 70. That's what we decided to do. We're going to live off 70% of our income. Now, you know, if you had the ability to live off 70% of your income, and you want to, and I'm talking about your combined income from your family income, you have the ability to live off of 70% of your income. If one of you were to lose a job, you can actually survive that storm. You can survive that transition. Why? Because you were thinking strategically, shrewdly. But if you're living at 100% of your income and one of you lose a job and a setback, that is a significant hit to your lifestyle and the way you live. And so God has called us to be shrewd in our approach to living not only this life, but making sure we're planning for the life that is beyond us. So how can one of the things we believed is by us investing and in 10% of our income going into the work of God, one of the things we recognize is that we are going to have a life that instead of focusing on acquiring stuff, I'm actually turning my stuff into stories. And guess what happens with stories? Stories live way longer than you. I'm telling you, the stuff that you have down in your basement, over in storage areas over here, you forgot about, you walk through it and you say, I forgot I had that. I forgot that was there. I didn't know I bought that then, because it's just stuff. But let me tell you, before you decide to bring it down into the basement, before you decided to go and put it over in storage, you said, hey, wait a minute. Somebody can have use of this. Somebody can make this, somebody can benefit from this. Let me give this. Who can I bless this with? This item with. And I take this stuff that I'm about to store and lose sight of for the next 20 years, going to be in the basement for that long, or 10 years, or whatever. Instead of you losing sight of it, and then eventually it's no longer any good for any use, for anybody, you're throwing it out at the curb because the technology has been antiquated and things are no longer in use. Before you get to that point, if you decided to give it to somebody, somebody could have come back and you say, man, I have been forever influencing the life of someone else. And that is living life beyond, with meaning, with purpose, beyond me. So how can I turn my stuff into stories? Do you want to turn your stuff into stories? I can tell you, if you donated to this building, to the renovation of this building, do you know every single person that comes through these doors and their life is changed, their marriage is restored, their child has turned back to them, and every single act of kindness that they receive, do you know you're a part of that story? And you may not remember the stuff that you put in your basement, but guess what? The person that you impacted will forever remember the difference that you've made in their life. What made Mother Teresa so popular is because she devoted herself to a life of poverty while focusing on enriching the life of others, helping and nursing others back to health. And by doing so, her stories became the legacy. She actually gained more wealth because of the stories. So how can I turn my stuff into stories? One of the things that we're going to be doing in the next few weeks, Pastor Maria already mentioned it, is we're going to be focused on creating or making over 50,000 meals for those that are needy. And I'm just thinking about all the people on the West Coast that are being displaced by fires. And I'm thinking about all the people that are still recovering, although they're not putting it on the news, still recovering from in the Bahamas from the hurricane that devastated that land. I'm thinking about all the people that are in need, that are still fleeing in Syria, fleeing their lands, and have no place to go. No idea. All of their income and their resources are now dried up, and they're deciding, what do I do now? And I'm thinking about all these things, all the people that could benefit from what we're going to do, from what we're about to do with 50,000 meals on December 14th. And I'm sitting there going, what do I need to do to invest my little bit of time, my little bit of opportunity to make an eternal impact in someone else's life? And we'll sit back and we'll say it's inconvenient, it's not timely, or that the church wants my money. By the way, Jesus doesn't want something from you, he wants something for you. And he wants you to live a life that is meaningful and that is purposeful. And you got a whole bunch of millionaires out here with a lot of stuff and a lot of money and feel empty, and they feel hopeless, and they feel like their life has no purpose. And you know what they end up doing? They end up turning themselves around to a lifestyle of generosity. Bill and Melinda Gates, just give all my money away, because they find that their life has purpose and meaning when they see something greater than who they are. We see it, we admire them, but then we don't think we can do it. But God has positioned each one of us with the ability to do exactly that. And then Jesus tells them something else. He says this, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. He says, and whoever is dishonest. So he says, this principle, whether you're a Christian or not, this principle still applies. You could benefit from applying this principle to your life. Whether you believe in God, whether you're a child of the light, it doesn't matter. He says, whoever can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. He says, so if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? We're going to be talking about that in a couple of weeks, so I want you to keep coming back about what those true riches are. Who can trust you with true riches? That means there's something greater than worldly wealth that exists. And Jesus is saying, I want to trust you with what God has entrusted to you. And if you can't be entrusted with what God has entrusted to you, what makes you think you're going to tap into true riches? True riches. And basically what he's saying is the money thing and the stuff thing that you already have, it's nothing but a test. It's a test on whether you're worthy to receive the true riches. And you're wondering why I don't experience certain things in my life. Well, you may not be experiencing the true richness of what life has to bring. The true fullness of what life has to bring for you is because you're so focused on worldly wealth and focusing on stuff and focusing on your life that you can't get to the next stage because you haven't passed the test. What is the test? That with the limited stuff that I have, the limited resources that I have, the limited things that I have, and the limited opportunity, and my time is small, how am I going to maximize what God has entrusted to me? And he goes on. He says, and if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, what? I earned this. I worked for this. Jesus, I went to work every day. I made this happen. How could you say it's somebody else's property? He says, you don't remember that the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof and all and everything that dwells therein? He says, it all belongs to me. It all belongs to me. So basically, you are my manager. You are the one that I placed here at this point in time in 2019 to manage the stuff that I've given to you. It is not your own. And so what would my money have to say if it was to say anything to me? It would say, I'll still be here when you're gone. That's how you know it's temporary. That's how you know it's not yours. Is because it's still going to be here when you're gone. I'm just let you know, that's just an indicator, small indicator that it's not yours. Also, what else would my money say about me if it had to say anything? It would say, the moment you think you own me is the moment that I own you. Because you think you own me? No, I got you. You'll never experience true richness. That's what your money would say. By the way, this is just lining up with what Jesus is saying. He says, you are a manager, you're not an owner. And if I'm a manager, then who money am I managing? It has to be used as a means. Your money would say, I'm a means, not an end. I'm a tool and a test. And so I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. So therefore, if being a means to an end is what gives your life meaning, then do you want your life to be a means? Do you want your life to be greater than what it is right now? Do you want your life to have eternal implications? Or do you want to just focus on right now? If you truly embrace this principle, do you want to do greater? Or to what ends do you want your life to be a means? Do you want to be known for just accumulating, consuming, having upgrades? Upgrades in my body, upgrades in my tech, upgrades in my house, upgrades in my car, just letting you know all the areas you have upgrades. Being fashion forward, or I have a house full of stuff. Is that what I want my life to be a means of or to be known for? Because guess what? People aren't going to talk about any of those things. But they will tell stories. They will tell stories at your funeral. I went to a funeral I conducted. This man, he was so cantankerous and mean, no one. The family was like, we don't want to hear anything about him. Don't say any word about him because we don't want you up there lying. That's what they said. Because everybody get up there and say something good. He said, we don't want you lying. And so I got up there and I said, there's one good thing that came out of this man's death. Everybody's like looking at me. Oh, he's about to lie. He's about to lie. I said, he brought all you together. So at least you can know you don't want to live your life like this. What do you want your life to be said about your life? That you accumulated stuff? That you got money and wealth? Or that my life has been prioritized and ordered around the things that matter to God? So I have to live. If you live for yourself and you live, it says, if you live for yourself and you'll only have yourself to show for it. However, you'll also have along with yourself some stuff for people to fight over when you're gone. That's about it. But if being a means to an end is what gives life meaning, to what ends do I want my life to be a means? How do I want my life to matter? I gave you one way. But life, you need to be thinking strategically. You need to be thinking further out. You need to be thinking beyond right now. You can go on the app, you can go on the Journey app, you can sign up and you can say, I'm going to donate this. We need $15,000, $16,000 to create 50,000 meals. You may say, I'm going to do that. Somebody can sit in here right now and say, I'm going to do just that. I'll donate the whole $16,000 because I want my life to have meaning beyond me. Some say, I can't do that, but I can do something. Well, then do something. I could take the little bit of time that I have and I could devote it on the 14th to coming out and actually making a difference. Making a difference rather than staying exactly where I'm at. What is it I'm going to do with that little bit of time, a little bit of opportunity to make a difference in this world? Am I going to think shrewdly? I'm going to think about myself. Jesus was standing there. He was telling this to his disciples and to the Pharisees. And then he says this. He says, the Pharisees who loved money heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. They had something to say about Jesus. They were angry. These Pharisees, the wealthy people there, people who had money there, they said nothing, but sneered and complained at Jesus. Do you know who they were? Do you know their names? I don't either. Because they never made a difference. You want to make a difference in life? You got to decide, how am I going to live my life where I can optimize the limited time that I have, the limited window of opportunity to make an eternal difference. Why don't you stand with me? We need to get this right. We need to teach our kids to have the right perspective concerning money. This is just the opening. Don't stay at home for the next 3 weeks while I try to finish this series. But you want to know how to do this. Come out over the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about how to get this way. How to develop this lifestyle instead of just admiring it in someone else. Let's talk about how to develop it right. So that when our money talks, it says that we're building a kingdom for God. When our money talks, it says that this person is shrewd. This person is strategic. They thought beyond themselves. They're making a difference in this world.
Wasn't that an incredible message? Did it speak to you? Did you feel that? Did you feel that in your spirit? I felt it. I felt it. Thank you, Pastor Peter, for sharing that message with us. Now it's time for us to make sure that we apply it, right? We receive the word and then we apply it. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because guess what? On there you can watch previous sermons and catch all of our videos from our services on Sunday. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook to stay connected with us. We have a community there. We uplift each other, we encourage each other, and we hold each other accountable. So please be inspired this week, apply the word, and we look forward to seeing you at our next service.